Hello, Dr. Tony Evans here. We're so excited for this series designed to minister to the Church of Jesus Christ, to its congregants and its leaders. It's called the COVID-19 Toolkit, where we just want to encourage you and provide you support because you're so critical to the well-being of not only your congregation, but the well-being of the spheres in which your congregants live and work and play. But in this one, we want to talk specifically to pastors and leaders, because not only do we have to minister to the emotional well-being of our congregation, but to ourselves as well, because we're stressed not only by the things that are happening around us, but then by the needs of the flock, and that just overlays another level of stress and struggle in our lives. So we want to encourage and minister to you through this toolkit as well, and to let you know we care about you as a pastor and as a leader, and we want to see God provide you the health and stability and well-being that you're providing and seeking to provide for others. So God bless you, and may this ministry ongoingly, as you keep with us, keep you strong as you keep others strong as well.
Well, hello, KAP pastors. Again, this is Charles Wolford with the Urban Alternative, as well as with KAP pastors. We welcome you to this second segment with Dr. Tony Evans, the founder of the Urban Alternative, as well as the senior pastor of Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship Church, and also to Pastor Bobby Gibson, who is the lead associate pastor at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship Church, who also leads the Free at Last and the counseling ministry. He's a licensed professional counselor. Welcome, Dr. Evans, and welcome, Pastor G.
Hello.
Thank you with you.
So good to have both of you, my brothers and my friends, co-laborers. We want to jump right in. This segment, we want to really share with our pastors, with the KAP, what's happening around mental health amid COVID, specifically with senior pastors and pastoral leaders. What would be words of encouragement? And so I just want to whisper some thoughts specifically around some statistics that we're seeing with pastors. We know that amid COVID, things have increased and we've had to be creative, but listen to this statistic from Soul Shepherding Institute, which is a resource for pastors, and they put out lots of data, but I was really surprised to see that among pastoral leadership, 90% of pastors, they say work 55 to 75 hours a week. We know that's probably not true. Dr. Evans, you probably work 1,200 hours a week. You are a machine. We don't know how you do it, but we want to learn from you. You are our guy. But it says 70% are feeling high levels of stress, and many, having to balance family and work. This is a challenge for them. So heavy loads of stress. And then, of course, the Francis Schaeffer Institute says that 50% of pastors being polled are experiencing high levels of depression during this time. And so let's just jump in. Pastor Evans, what are you seeing among pastors? You lead a host of pastors around the world. What are you hearing from pastors amid COVID, their levels of stress? What are you hearing from them?
Well, as I talk to pastors, a lot of the stress is due to the confusion that this pandemic has brought about. How do you hold on to your congregation? How do you keep your bills still being paid? How do you effectively minister to them? Now they can go to church anywhere they want to, simply by sitting in their home. How do you keep them? How do you keep them engaged and committed to the church? How do you make them wanting to come back after they used to being in their pajamas going to church?
To in their pajamas going to church, right?
So all this, and then the pastor's own concern for his own health and his own family. So when you put the confusion along with the uncertainty, and then societal concerns, because you've got members losing jobs, you've got members who need to be ministered to, who you can't get to easily. So all of those have become a confluence of challenges in the lives of pastors, and it becomes a weight on them that can bring stress, discouragement, depression, fear, anxiety, that has to be worked through. And that's why any pastor needs to have others that he's interfacing with. So he's not trying to get through all this all alone, because everybody's facing the same problem in different ways. So since everybody's facing this in different ways, you don't have to look far to find somebody to talk to, because
right.
you're not in this by yourself, but you can mutually encourage one another as we try to walk through it.
Thank you. You know, it's unfortunately during these times, it's almost easy to kind of isolate in some regards, because some people want to withdraw. Pastor G, you know, a senior pastor who's wanting to withdraw. We talked a little bit in previous segment, particularly as it relates to withdrawing and you know, members wanting to push away. You know, experiencing, you know, some even talking with Dr. Evans prior to this episode. Our church has been broken into during COVID, where they broke into the finance room and ravaged everything. Someone stole our church van. We know that during these times, people are struggling, and the effects of that on pastors, you know, coming in on every side. You got people scrounging for resources. What are you hearing about mental health of pastors during this time? If you don't speak to nobody else, speak to me, because even, you know, with things that are happening, what is that looking like in mental health for senior pastors and pastoral leaders as a whole?
You know, as Pastor mentioned, you know, a lot of depression, anxiety, and stress, and fear of the unknown. Again, this is new. You know, it keeps moving. You know, and I think being a senior pastor, you know, people are looking to them for directions and for answers. And many times the only answer they have is, I don't know. But I think though, like Pastor said, when they have a circle where they're actually able to kind of communicate their own emotion, because as you know, in your statistic, pastoring period is a lonely vocation. They tend to isolate. I don't know if it's because of, I don't know what it is, but they tend to isolate. They have a real small circle, and some things that are really, really probably challenging them, they may hesitate in sharing it. But this pandemic has caused, I think, some revelations of some things that might have already been going on that they were dealing with in their congregations, in their personal life, in their families. I mean, it's just so much coming at senior pastors, because as we refer to our pastor as the angel of the house, he sits high, and everyone is going to him. You know, sometimes they don't even want to talk to me. They don't even want to talk to anybody else. They want to talk to him. So it's a lot of pressure. I think, like you mentioned on yesterday, you know, having to make decisions. You know, feeling like I got to make these decisions. I got to be on point. That's stressful in itself, because you want to make the right decision. Right. So, but this is new. I see some of them are actually seeking help, seeking connectivity, community, and those that are doing that, they do better. I mean, some of them have had to actually go, and you know, depression is a real deal.
Sure.
So for a pastor to feel like I can't go get help, I'm gonna get out on a limb and get medication. Many of them won't do that, but that may be the solution, because it would be temporary. But if you can't function, and if it's keeping you like you can't sleep, you don't want to do, you have to get some help. So and here's the important piece. Help is out there.
Yes, sir.
It's there.
You know, with the Fuller Institute, which is a research arm, they're saying that 70% of pastors that are surveyed and polled say that they do not have a close friend that they can talk to, or someone that they can just kind of, you know, let's say they can just dump on. Why do you think, Dr. Evans, it's so tough for pastors to have that close friend that maybe understand or connect? Or is it something with pastors, or just with the vocation that 70% of pastors surveyed say that they don't have a close friend that they can chat with?
Wow.
Well, a lot of it is preserving an image. With pastoring comes a certain expectation and an image. And to let your hair down, so to speak, or to dump on, could be viewed as jeopardizing how you are perceived.
Yeah.
And rather than take that risk, many will bear the burden of the circumstance they're in. That's why you've got to identify somebody who's also willing to share with you. So you're not there on this island by yourself.
Right.
When you can
right.
mutual sharing and caring relationship that's authentic, then it's safe. And pastors are concerned about being safe. And for good reason, because there are people out there who seek to hurt you, who seek to undermine you. But when you see a person that has integrity and that has care for you and who's willing to mutually share with you, then that opens up the door for a meaningful relationship. And if you want to find it, you can find it.
Yeah.
With that same research, excuse me, it said 50% of pastors also don't have accountability partners. Dr. Evans, you said you have a group of accountability individuals, 2 people. You do Saturdays, I believe you shared with that. As it relates to accountability, we're seeing increase in substance abuse among pastors and leaders just in general. Pastor Gibson, talk to us a little bit with pastors, and their survival, that self-care. What would you recommend for self-care of pastors who are, struggling and resorting to maybe some things that are not so healthy for them?
Well, I think it started with what Pastor was talking about earlier, being able to find someone that you can be vulnerable. And I like what he said, though. I mean, I'm not going to share me, and you're not going to share your stuff.
Right.
So you have to find someone that happens with. And that's the key, because many times you said it yesterday, Pastor Wolford, we choose to suffer alone. And then when we try to suffer alone, we will self-medicate. Yeah. And some may drink, some may, whatever the vice is, you tend to try to numb it, because you don't want to, first of all, you don't want to address it, and then you don't like the way you feel. So you're trying to get out of it. So I think if you have someone, it can be just one person that, AA, that's their model. That's what they do. Yeah. They have what's called a sponsor. Yep. And so when you get where you feel like you get upset, whatever, and you just got to have a drink, they tell you, call somebody. Call your sponsor. And many times in many cases, that sponsor can talk them down from doing something that they're gonna regret later. So, but it's called relationship. In relationship, these pastors, man, if they never had it, it's not gonna happen overnight. But it may be, we speaking to KAP pastors, it may be that they feel confident enough in this organization that they can at least start to move toward that, even with pastor, or you're part of it. So they at least have one connection, they can at least begin to do it.
So talk to with our senior pastors who may have associates and other leaders, Dr. Evans and Pastor G. What signs can pastors begin to look for if you have your associate pastors and your leaders who may be withdrawing and they themselves are experiencing some mental distress and they are checking out? It's like, I'm tapped out. What are some of the signs that that a senior pastor can start looking for their associate pastors and their team leads, Dr. Evans?
Well, when you see they are becoming more slowful or slacking in their responsibility, to investigate, is something wrong? Is something going on? If you are sensing difference between he and his mate, because sometimes that will show up from a family standpoint, that rolls over then into the ministry or with his children. If you see lack of self-control, getting angrier quicker, impatience with people quicker, so things that are not normative for what you know about that person, that's not a one-off. You are beginning to see some sort of pattern that's not normal for that person, then don't just dismiss it. begin to investigate it, because there could be some underlining things producing that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
Pastor G, being the senior associate or the lead associate at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship Church, Dr. Evans just spoke to making sure we identify what's going on with some of the leaders, some of the other associate pastors. What should associate pastors and other leaders be watching for their senior pastors if they see some things? You as lead associate walked Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship Church, walked with them during a very difficult time of our senior pastor, Dr. Tony Evans, a season of his life. What would you say to associate pastors, lead associates who have to hold up the arms of the leader? What would be some things that one to look for and watch, and what would be the tools that they can use to do that?
Well, I think for me, in the role that I'm honored to be in, I think for me it was I had to get to know pastor, because it takes time. Mm-hmm. So what I look for, I guess even as a therapist, I look for affect in the moods, demeanor, body language. Great example, when First Lady, even when she got sick, that's when it actually started. And I meet with pastor every Sunday morning for a time of just updates, whatever, and I pray with him. So one day he came in and he was obviously not himself. And not only did I notice that, but other people that's close to him noticed that. So you ask the question, how you doing, whatever. Now, pastor, a lot of time, his go-to statement, I'm hanging in there.
He know you well, huh, Dr. Evans?
Too well.
And so
that's your friend.
So he said that, but obviously I knew there was something else. So I think the next Sunday or whatever, he actually began to kind of open up. And one thing I appreciate about Dr. Evans, through all of this, he really let us see how to walk through something like that. He did. He let not only the lead us, but even a congregation. So for me, I think as an associate pastor, just stay close, pray for him, and just get to know him. I mean, and a lot of times the Holy Spirit can give you the timing of it, because sometimes it's not time. But I think what I had to look for in pastor, because pastor can kind of hold it together, especially when he get in that pulpit. I mean, it's like, man, what is this? So you have to kind of get close enough to see a change in his demeanor, his affect. And one of the things that, like Pastor mentioned, he said what he looked for in us is like if we slow full or whatever. Well, there was a couple of times Pastor and I could discuss something. I come back in the next day or two and I bring it up. It's like it never happened. It's not Dr. Tony Evans. But when he's on his A game, man, again, we just have to just serve the man of God, stay close enough, and then be courageous enough if we do see something to speak out. And we can't make him do anything, but we can say, hey, here's what I see or something I'm concerned about, and then just leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And so one, as a leader, we certainly appreciate you, Pastor Gibson, as the lead associate pastor at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship Church, the weight that was on you during those times of seeing how you really supported Dr. Evans. And I, likewise with you, Dr. Evans, thank you for your transparency and your vulnerability during that time, helping us all heal. The world was watching. I think just shared with you, the world became your classroom as how to deal with grief. And we really appreciate you teaching and walking and allowing us to walk with you during that time, as difficult as that was. So thank you for that. So one of the, just last thing, particularly relates to our vulnerability as pastors. There's a narrative that we share of one where the theme oftentimes at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship is where no one stands alone. Right. But in these moments is also, for pastors to be authentic, to be vulnerable and, naked and unashamed to some degree of that exposure of raising their hands. Dr. Evans, I would just ask you to just encourage the KAP pastors during this time of the importance of being transparent, raising their hand during these times, that they don't have to stand alone. And certainly I will end with just more resources for our KAP pastors. Dr. Evans, encourage us, if you would.
Yes.
Well, this is a time of divine reset. God has allowed this because if he hadn't allowed it, it wouldn't happen. And therefore, he has a purpose in it for his people. And I believe what God is doing is he's resetting the church. We're now having to learn to do church outside of church, which means he wants the church to be bigger than the building. And that puts some stress on us, that puts some weight on us. But if we understand that God is up to something, and this is not just a problem, but a purposeful predicament, and begin to look at it through those lenses, and begin to interface with our flock, with our leaders, and with others who can come alongside of us, God can burst something new out of something old. Woman is in labor pain. It's a difficult time. But it's a difficult time because a deliverance is coming. We're in a labor situation due to this pandemic. God wants to deliver new life. So don't lose the new life focus because we're focused on the labor pain. And when you're there, you get in a baby, there's a loved one beside you, holding your hand, encouraging you, or the doctor, there's somebody there to make sure that you don't walk through that pain alone. Make sure that we don't walk through our pain alone either.
Amen.
Well, thank you, Dr. Evans and Pastor Gibson. This has been encouraging to me as well.
I'm Dawn Marie Pearson. I am a licensed Christian marriage and family therapist and a licensed pastoral counselor. And for more than 2 decades, my husband and I have been in ministry. We planted a church in the Caribbean. And we also had a horse ranch, where we would do therapy and interventions for children, adults, families, and also team building for churches and for their teams and for those who minister through the body of Christ. And I'm also currently the program manager for the Tony Evans Training Center.
Very good. Thank you. So good to have you part of a family. Pastor Ikki?
Yeah, again, just good to be with you all. I'm Ikki Soma, pastor City Refuge around Urban Alternative and Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship. I'm known as the Ick Man. That's Dr. Evans' nickname for me. So I was Dr. Evans' pastoral assistant. Been in multicultural ministry now for almost 20 some odd years now. Married, wife Tara, and we've got 2 girls, Yvetta and Grace. I'm also chaplain for the Houston Rockets. And again, that's why this talk on mental health of pastors is important to me, because I've seen it both in the NBA, but also in the ministry world as well.
Pastor Ikki, what have you done particularly as it relates to your congregation in light of COVID? This is, I don't know if your congregation is live yet, if you've started having services again. You have not. So pastoring now via social media or all the other platforms, but even, doctors, medical physicians have done telehealth, and, there's call-ins for what they have been doing. What's been the sharing with your congregation? What tools have you been using to encourage your congregation, but then also having your congregation feed to you as well back and forth? Has there been an exchange there, and you're using certain resources to during this time of COVID?
Yeah, Pastor Wolford, I wish 6 months ago I would have bought stock in Zoom.
I think we all are saying that.
Yeah. And I think Dr. Pearson's going to write a book called like Zoom Anxiety or Zoom something. I mean, I'm on Zoom so much now. I think I've been on Zoom the last 5 or 6 months more than I've been in the last 5 or 6 years. Yeah. And so one of the things we do is we do Zoom check-ins. And that's been really good, where similar to this, we've got, 12, 13, 14 people on the line do Zoom check-ins. And also, again, I really believe in the philosophy of the elders are under shepherds, under the chief shepherd, Jesus Christ. And so our elders have called all our members, one-on-one over the phone just to check on them. Early on, when the grocery stores were closing, my wife and I called several of our older members and just said, hey, you know what, my wife and I are able-bodied, we have time, we're able to go get groceries for you. So if you need us to go pick up groceries or prescriptions, let us know, because if you have concerns of being exposed to that outside world for now, we'll be willing to do that. So those are some things that we've done, but still nothing I think can substitute gathering as a body. So I know people are really longing for that and desire that.
And during COVID, Dr. Donna Marie, it seems as if the stress levels of our congregants have been really high. What advice would you give to a pastor as he's exchanging and having to provide counsel to his congregants who are having high levels of stress? And I think the danger as a pastor is sometimes we may feel like we have to have all the answers. And sometimes our members look to us as if we're to have all the answers, and telling a pastor it's okay to say, I don't know. What other counsel would you give us, a senior pastor pastoring in amid COVID when there's high levels of stress outside, how to manage that and navigate those waters?
I think one of the important things, and Pastor Ikki kind of had a blueprint for it there, of where he talked about as he meets with his elders and his elders are reaching out to the congregation, of making sure that contact is still happening, and not the pastor himself having to reach out to everyone, but that the elders, the small group leaders, the Bible study leaders, that they're in place helping to still create community and fellowship with those in the congregation by the Zoom meetings, the phone calls, the checking in, making accommodations for people in your congregation who may not be tech savvy, maybe some older members and so on, who it's picking up the telephone and connecting with them, and that's someone staying connected. That's a really important part of navigating this season, because it's the isolation that can breed greater and greater anxiety and that greater sense of hopelessness. Is this ever going to end? And how am I going to make it through this? And that sense of, is anyone caring for me and even my practical needs in this time? So making sure that those pods of connection are taking place is a really valuable way of mitigating the anxiety and the stress. And then being mindful of what we would consider the vulnerable people within your congregation at a time like this. For example, single parents who really just don't have anyone else at home with them, no access anymore, maybe to babysitters and so on. How are their needs being met, or how are they just being remembered? Something dropped off on their front porch. Just ways to show that they're being thought of, and being mindful of the unspoken needs that now that families are together, those families that may have been in crisis before because of domestic issues, being mindful of those escalations that may now be happening in the dark, and how are those being spoken to in a way that those people who are in that vulnerable population hear it and go, help is still available for me. But I think it begins with the delegation, as the pastor is meeting with his team of leaders, elders, and they are, by extension, extending their arms to the congregation.
As one additional thought, I'm on some phone calls with pastors during the week, and one pastor was sharing with the rest of us is he's hearing from a lot of his pastoral team this phrase that I had not heard before, and he says many of my pastors are saying that they have decision fatigue. That was not a phrase that I had really wrestled with or heard before, but decision fatigue, like similar to what you said, Dr. Don, is just checking out. I don't want to make another decision. I don't want to decide anything else. Ikki, how does that resonate with you? Any thoughts around that phrase? I don't know if you've ever heard that before, if it connects with you in any way as a pastor and as a leader in your general practice. Have you heard that thought at all?
I'm going to need some context on that, Pastor Wolford. I mean, so decision fatigue, and like you were making decisions for members who say, hey, I have to choose between getting unemployment or doing this, or choosing, like, what kind of decisions are they talking about?
Well, I think the general context of pastors were saying that they are always being sought after to make decisions or share advice. And they're saying, I'm tired of having to make decisions, and the church and the world is just, it's so much information that's coming. The context was pastors, they used it, that pastors are saying they have decision fatigue. They don't want to do anything. It's almost like a checkout context narrative for them.
Yeah, I think that's genuine and real. I mean, and a lot of, again, part of the thing in talking here, I don't know the base of Kingdom Agenda pastors, if they're predominantly African-American, some white. I mean, so I know, actually just finished writing a book on the difference between black preaching and white preaching, and black church and white church. And that's why I talk about, I think some elder boards in some churches are more like a corporate board. So in some churches, yes, a lot of people look to the pastor of, hey, I need advice, make a decision about job, career, family issues, whatever. And the pastor can't be an expert on everything. Like, he can't make a decision on, should you have turkey or ham for, Christmas this year? Like, he didn't go to seminary for that, And I think part of it is, and Dr. mentions this all the time with kingdom disciples, is you want to equip them to have a walk of their own so that they hear from the Lord. So whether it's a decision on turkey or ham for Thanksgiving or Christmas, or if it's a major decision of, hey, do we send our kid to this school 100 miles away or keep them here in community college, they can hear from the Lord and know what the Lord wants to do. So I think it depends. Yeah, if there's a pastor in their cultural context where people or members are coming to them all the time saying, what should I do? I would have decision fatigue as well. And I think that's where, as a pastor, hopefully you can equip them, disciple them so that they're walking the Lord and receive wisdom and guidance from Him. So they're coming to you more for advice rather than coming to you for, make the final call for us.
Right.
Thank you. Dr. Don, you want to add anything to that?
I think that is really, really good insight about that decision fatigue, and that there is a difference, that distinction between coming for advice or offering thoughts, wisdom, advice, and feeling obligated to be the one to make the decision for them. Making that distinction, I think, is so important.
Very good. Thank you all both. God bless you all. To all of our KAP pastors, thank you all for joining us during these sessions. We want to encourage you to click on the link that's going to be provided for you for additional resources. I want to just remind you that Dr. Tony Evans and the Urban Alternative, we are here for you as resources to encourage you as a pastor to lead your congregation. Don't forget also to join the Tony Evans Center, where you have tons of resources, particularly as it relates to preaching tools, but also tools that you can use to encourage your congregation. God bless you all real good. Again, thank you, Dr. Tony Evans, for your leadership, for your guidance and your mentorship. God bless you, KAP pastors. We look forward to seeing you all real soon.